XFL 3.0 opens the draft door for XFL 2022 players. XFL 3.0 has several of its cities' coaching personnel returning from 2 years ago, but the olive branch for returning to the league has also extended for players from the XFL 2020 era. So the current XFL leadership has opened the door for the possibility of the league's players from 2 years ago returning by giving them an automatic entry into the league's draft pool in mid-October. A specific date will be set by the league and its media partner Disney ESPN soon. We are hearing that potentially ESPN would cover some of the draft, which would be awesome. So in theory, a former Battlehawks player like wide receiver DeMornay Pearson-L or punter Marquette King, totally want him back, who both played for the team in 2020, could presumably return to St. Louis again. That would be awesome. It would make for a fun story if some of the league's best players from 2 years ago returned. But man, that is 2 years ago. Think about that. However, some players who played in the XFL 2 years ago are gainfully employed by other leagues, while others have moved on to the next phase of their lives off the field. For example, DC Defenders running back Donnell Pumphrey, a record-breaking runner at San Diego State, in recent days joined his alma mater's coaching staff. 3 years is a long time in a football player's lifespan. You know what put an end to the XFL's 2020 season. In turn, for some players, it provided a bitter and abrupt ending to their careers. For some players in 2020, XFL 2020, primarily veterans, the league was their final hurrah playing pro football. But for many others, the XFL was a springboard that helped them extend their playing careers. Now, 134 former XFL players from 2020 are currently on other Pro Football League rosters. Let me repeat. 134 former XFL players from 2020 are currently on other Pro Football League rosters. 27 are on NFL teams, 33 on CFL rosters, 74 just finished a season playing in the USFL. Other former XFL players, like Reese Horn, are also playing in Europe for leagues like the European League of Football. The XFL 2020 players on CFL and USFL rosters under contract are seemingly off limits for XFL 3.0. However, there's a chance that some former XFL players in the NFL could make their way back to the league they played for 2 years ago. Now, here's the big kicker. NFL cuts. In a month's time, NFL teams will trim their rosters from 90 players, that's a lot, to 53. Remember, The Rock is 54. Each team will add 16 players to their practice squad, which is bigger than what it was before. So when the smoke clears, 21 players per NFL team will run out of real estate once active and practice squad rosters are completed before the regular season. That is 672 players who won't land on an NFL roster to start the season. Some of those players could be former XFL 2020 participants. So it's important to note that XFL team personnel directors and coaches are currently attending NFL camps, no doubt in the hopes of scouting players for the upcoming XFL draft and season. Many of them are first-year undrafted players that were scouted by the XFL's football brass already at the NFL Combine, College Pro Days, and the All-Star Collegiate Talent Showcases like the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, and many others. Vaughn Hutchins, who is the director of player personnel for the DC team, there's a picture of him out there at NFL training camps. It's also worth noting that there are returning coaches and player personnel people from the XFL in 2020, like Bob Stoops, Randy Mueller, June Jones, Jonathan Hayes, Joey Clickscales, Jim Herman, and others who could be looking to get some of their old players back playing for them again. Some of the league's best players drafted by the XFL in the fall of 2019 were on NFL teams. Repeat, some of the XFL's best players drafted by the XFL in the fall of 2019 were on NFL teams grinding in training camps and playing preseason games that summer. That is why, if you're an XFL fan and a USFL fan or fan control football, this is your season to watch these guys on NFL preseason games. So people are like, I don't care about the preseason. Us all football nerds, we're all about that. While the XFL was planning for their 2020 season 3 summers ago, PJ Walker, Donald Parham, Storm Norton, Michael Dunn, Cam Phillips, Jordan Tamo, and so many others were on NFL rosters fighting to make teams. One of the most significant question marks surrounding the XFL 3.0 is where most of their players will come from. The answer seems pretty clear based on what transpired in the summer of 2019. The XFL has worked out over 1,300 players at their 6 showcases across the country. The league has potentially left the door open for another showcase that has one more for specialists this October, but a good portion of the 2023 XFL rosters will be comprised of players currently on NFL teams. Some of them could be familiar faces from 2020. But for now, and for this article, let's look back at some of the players from 2020 who are available that could be back on XFL teams and perhaps back playing in the same cities. So the XFL 2020 free agents, the automatic draft invitations have been sent out to XFL players from 2020. The question is how many of them will answer the call, and the ones that do, how many of them will be drafted. Some of the invites became public at this point simply because players from the 2.0 either openly expressed their desire to be back in the league or shared the announcement that they have accepted an invite into the draft. Talented wide receivers, Renegades 4.2 speedster Jeff Badet, defenders, wide receiver Rashad Ross hope to lace up again in the XFL. New York Guardians running back Tim Cook, who shared the backfield with another spring football league standard Darius Victor and Matthew Colburn, recently worked out for the league at the Arizona Showcase running a 4.5 in the 40 dash. Unlike 2019, XFL 3.0 has not publicly released the names of the players who worked out for them in their 6 showcases. However, sometimes the identity of a familiar face from 2020 can't be concealed. Former DC Defenders quarterback Cardale Jones participated in the showcase in Texas most recently. So a lot has changed since 2019. 3 years ago, Cardale Jones was a hot ticket item in the XFL, almost as hot as a ticket to see Sonic 2. Oh, Mike Mitchell bringing in there. If you don't know that story, you'll just have to join a Discord, ask a question. But there's a whole thing about Sonic 2. Or Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Several XFL, I'm not going to answer you. You're just going to have to research it. Several XFL teams had, just look at any XFL News Hub article about Cardale Jones, and it's in there. Several XFL teams had the 6'5" signal caller Jones at the top of their quarterback priority list. The former Ohio State standout, who once upon a time was projected as a first-round pick in the NFL draft after winning a national championship with the Buckeyes, was buried on the back end of NFL rosters to start his pro career. But the 4th-round pick of Buffalo Bills in 2016 had started to show some genuine progress a bit in preseason action with the Chargers from 2017 into 2019. However, it wasn't enough for him to break through and move up the depth chart. Jones eventually landed on the Seahawks practice squad in September 2019, but he was released later that month. The Cowboys offered him a practice squad position, but instead, with a chance to start and get real game reps, he signed with the XFL in October. Things didn't go according to plan in the XFL for Cardale. He started for current Houston Texans offensive coordinator Pep Hamilton in D.C., but the current QB guru, who has helped mold Davis Mills and Justin Herbert in successful NFL seasons, couldn't work his magic with Jones. Cardale got off to a promising start, but faltered, finished the shortened season with 4 touchdowns, 7 picks, while completing only 54% of his passes. It's doubtful that Jones ends up as a starter this time around, but he wants back in to get another shot. He posted this tweet: Dear Football, see you spring 2023. Sincerely, 12. We'll get to that post in a second. Several other notable players from 2020 are in the XFL 2022 draft pool. Among them, Devon Smith, remember him, all the things with the pizza chicken salad thing in the USFL. Cameron Artis Payne, Nick Hawley, Jalen Tolliver, Nick Truesdale, Jordan Smallwood, Edmund Robinson, Josh Hawkins, Eric Dungy, quarterback, Justin Stockton, James Fulton Jr., Terrence Plummer, Jazz Ferguson, Gabe Wright, Jalen Collins. I mean, you got a lot of guys in there. Many players on the list above spent time on other pro leagues rosters since 2020. The likelihood is that some of them will be reunited with their former coaches in the XFL 2020 or the DPPs who drafted them in 2019. 528 players will be on XFL roster 2023 rosters when training camp starts in January in Arlington, Texas. Most of the league's rosters will come from current NFL rosters with some assistance from the NFL Alumni Academy. Don't forget about that. But the players who return to the XFL from 2020 will, in many respects, be the unsung heroes of the league because the road they have taken back has been the most challenging. So this is very cool to see some of the old faces back. And speaking of Cardale Jones, after that tweet was put out, teased his return. So we saw that. See you in the spring. The XFL, that's right, the XFL Twitter posted a little emoji with a little guy with a little light or a little eye thing. So when he teased about a return to football in the spring of 2023, conveniently enough, the XFL's official Twitter account replied to his post after posting that. So based on this, it appears Cardale will sure be part of the XFL when it returns in 2023. And oddly enough for Cardale, it'll be his first return to football, as well as he'll be making his return to professional football since he last played, of course, with the DC Defenders. Cardale himself looking fantastic shape in the XFL showcase and look ready to go based on his Ohio State Pro Day. Now, whether he comes back to Reggie Barlow and DC, that remains to be seen. He did have some time in the CFL and then kind of didn't really make it for that long. Is the reason why and that was my speculation, that the reason why he signed with the Elks, but then really never even went up there was because that he got some kind of offer to do something with the XFL and asked to get out of his contract. Well, we'll see if this kind of happens. The other thing, too, is that the CFL season ends in November. Could some of these CFL guys that are in the CFL make a return to the XFL as well? We're just going to have to find out. The draft for the XFL 3.0 era for the 2023 season is going to be so much fun. And aside from logos and team names, that day is going to be the most fun, especially if we get to see some OG 2.0 players come back for the 3.0 era.